And we are live.
In 2018, a crack YouTube unit was sent to social media prison by an algorithm for the crime they didn't commit. These producers promptly escaped from maximum security social media stockade to the internet underground. Today, still wanted by social media, they survive as producers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the Smash team.
We're looking at the sun in colored magnetogram here. We see an active region rising, 0 sunspots, and actually very low levels of solar activity. 10.7 centimeter radio flux remains at 70. And give us 1 minute of leave time. We will be back to do the rest of your daily space weather. All right, tell your friends and your foes to tune into the video. If they haven't already done so, tell them to tune in. Anyway, we see a bunch of very large active mixed fields here on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Let's look at the last 9 hours of solar activity in 171 angstroms. My favorite wavelength. Again, that's 9 hours of solar activity. And we're going to do one more view here, which would be the 304 angstroms view, as we see some depth going on in the corona and some filaments we'll cover in a moment. There's the 304 angstroms view. And we see a bunch of filaments, especially on the eastern limb. So there's more activity rising. And there's a bunch of filaments really facing the Earth right now that are being held in place by those magnetic fields. So before we move on to that, I would invite you to visit our new affiliate link via Hemp Lucid. Now, if you're interested in whole plant tinctures, check out hemplucid.com. Visit the links in our description below this video. It's the Spaced Out campaign for all our spaced out viewers. Everything from water-soluble CBDs to MCT oil, hemp oil CBDs, vapes, THC-free Kalki products, whole plant lip balm and so on, wax, body butters, even CBDs for your pets. So check out the links in the description, as there are a bunch of them. And we are branching out into a whole lot of areas, as we've got a lot of stuff in our mission. Here's a synoptic map by Spencer. And we are noting a bunch of filamentary activity all around where that active region is. We got a bunch of large mixed fields going on there. We got Epic Pen. And let's cut the music. All right. Anyway, there's a synoptic map. Nothing too noteworthy on that. All of the south coronal hole looks kind of big. These links courtesy solarhand.net. Have a look. Next, we're going to look at the real-time solar wind. So we see recent fluctuations in the BZ there as it narrows down to the 0 line. Field has weakened a little bit. That's the black line there, the BT. Phi angles at 292. Solar wind density down to 3.84. And solar wind speed down to 333, 331. So that's a solar minimum condition on the solar wind. Let's look at the magnetosphere movies. We're just going to look at pressure and density, necessarily not in that order. Here's the density. We're hoping. We're going to see some striations here, and you see that coming in there from the left of your screen. Those light portions are lower density solar wind. So just please note that the low density is the white and the high density is the navy blue. Little bit of magnetohydrodynamics early in your daily space weather video. Here's the pressure. Nothing too noteworthy here. It's just a basic solar minimum type condition. And that's 4 hours, courtesy University of Michigan. Next, we're going to look at the total electron content forecast as we saw a dip in the electron content here, followed by a resurgence, and it should be reflected on this data. We're going to see the electrons drop off to almost nothing, right around there. And they're on their way back up now. So GPS errors around the equator should be back to something like 6 meters, 3 to 6 meters. So electrons are back. Relativistic electrons are actually low right now. We won't get into that too much as it is not part of the normal coverage. Thanks to our latest Patreon, once again, up to 4 now. The tier is only $1, so please visit links in the description to support the channel. Also, if you're interested in bicycling, one of the best ways to upgrade your bike is with a wheel set. So check out theveloshop.net. That's theveloshop.net. And maybe get yourself a new set of wheels. You could take a bike that's a $100 bike and put a $2,000 wheel set on it, and let me tell you, you will notice a difference. Putting a thing like a carbon fiber wheel set, keep in mind rotating resistance. The rotating mass, if you put 1 pound of weight here in the rotating mass of the wheel, that's equivalent to putting 4 pounds of mass here on the non-rotating portion of the wheel. So putting on a high-end wheel set absolutely takes a low-end bike and makes it into a moderately good bike. I mean, sure, the 808 Firecrest front clincher is $1,150. By the way, that dimpling on the surface, that is for aerodynamics. That's the same reason a golf ball has a dimple. That is to break up laminar airflow. Zip is so sophisticated, they make wheels that give you a negative drag at race speeds. Anyway, check out theveloshop.net. Also, follow us on Instagram if you like. If you want to see some behind-the-scenes stuff, here are some of yesterday's shenanigans. Ah, yes. Another day, another northwesterly wind. As it's been very cold out. Very cold here in eastern Pennsylvania. Please leave a comment and let us know if it's freezing and wet where you are, or if the planet's warming because you live in a box. Here we are in the Lehigh Parkway, and I'm not. The final climber. The final climber. Oh. So we get very silly on bike rides because we get bored. And we do stuff like this. And anyway, please sponsor cycling. And If you got a bike in the shed that needs air in the tires and lube on the chain, please do so. Again, thanks donors. Let's get back to space weather. Let's look at the Enlil spiral to show you that there is nothing going on except a really weak solar wind. And so a whole heap and helping and nothing in the forecast, although there was a coronal mass ejection yesterday. It's minor enough that it's barely showing up on the forecast. So it looks like it's expected to miss the Earth to the west. We're not even going to get into it anymore. Check out spaceweathernews.com to see that the X-ray flux is totally flatlined. We do see some striations there in the GOES magnetometer. KP index was steady at 2 all day yesterday, and now it's dropped back down to 1 as solar activity decreased. And electrons are on their way to ramping back up as we don't have any kind of significant proton event going on right now. Solar wind is weak enough that electrons should return back to a nominal level. And we're not referring to relativistic ones, just the regular old everyday GOES electron flux. Charging hazards are non-existent, and the F2 layer is extremely discharged on the nighttime side. Really heavily discharged area there. So yeah, the non-sun portion of the planet ionospherically is extremely discharged. That is a giant discharge blob there. And we'll see what we see when we look at some other instruments. Aurora forecasts are pretty weak, although if you're in north central Canada, or if you're at McMurdo Base in Antarctica, perhaps you can see some auroras. So go outside and look up, and then leave a comment, as we are interested in intergalactic viewers as well as viewers from strange places. So if you're in some place besides the US, for instance, please leave a comment. Here's the line of sight synoptic map, and we're looking at the sun here, if you weren't aware, folks. Now the blue is the B field. That's the interplanetary magnetic field in which you reside, and the green is the north polar field, and the red is the south polar field. I just wanted to illustrate, put this up here to illustrate how active regions and sunspots affect the B field. You see the way it's shaped on the setting limb on the west over here. See the way the shape over here is very uniform, and over here it's very chaotic due to the active regions. That is the way magnetism affects, well, your life directly, but how it affects the magnetohydrodynamic heliosphere. Now, these measurements are based on a lot of ground-based magnetometers as well as stereo A and B. Here's the top view. So this is stereo A and this is stereo B. I would note the way this active region is affecting this area right here. Let's go to the last frame. See the way this looks like it's hovering? And that's because there's a complexity of fields there that is obscuring some of what's going on there. So we are expecting some big fluctuations in the GOES magnetometer. Look for that throughout the day. Keep in mind this data is 2 hours and 13 minutes old. Let's go to stereo A's coronagraph. Trying to compress as much info as we can into as short of a video as we can, but there's a lot of info to cover. So here's the stereo A coronagraph, looking at the sun from 4 months behind the Earth in an orbital fashion. Again, there was a small coronal mass ejection there, but it's barely even worth noting. So let's move on. Here's a location of things like planets, the moon phase, etc. Here's where they'll be in 1 week. The Earth just crossing the Jupiter opposition, I believe. check the geocentric view for a second. Anyway, there's that. I prefer the diagrammatic view. And what's going on above your head right now? Well, if you're where I am, which is in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, the situation would look like this. Jupiter and Saturn about to set, Venus just rising. So if you got a low horizon at about 5 o'clock in the morning, check it out. Venus is going to be super bright. The morning star is actually a planet. Follow us on Twitter if you like. We don't tweet. Follow us on Facebook. We don't interact much there either because Mark likes to censor people like us. We don't want to get entirely deplatformed, so we don't give Mark too much trouble. Shout out Zuckerberg if you're watching the video and if you understand the distinction between your ass and a hole in the ground. Also, follow us on Minds, a legitimate grassroots social media network that will not censor you or deperson you or deplatform you or anybody else. Also, follow us on Gab, our latest foray into social media. Please press like and subscribe if you haven't on YouTube also, and press the notification bell. You may even see our videos if you do so. We cover some controversial stuff, and we try not to get too controversial and get ourselves deleted off of the channel entirely. So thanks, new subscribers, especially thanks, donors. Let's look at earthquakes, because there's still quite a bit of stuff to cover, so stay tuned, folks. 4.9 in Tonga. A downtick in earthquakes in Oceania. So check it out. There's really a shortage of earthquakes here over the past 24 hours. Heads up, New Zealand, Tonga, Fiji, etc. Excuse me. Shout out to David Devine. Did you feel that 5.6? I'll bet you did. Please leave a comment. Here's a 4.4 at Chile. Here's a 4.6 at India. We've been seeing about 1 or 2 quakes a week in that region, well inland. Here's a 4.8 at Indonesia. Please leave a comment if your mother-in-law's photograph fell off the wall. Here's a 4.5 at Mexico. 4.5 at Japan. 4.5 in Iran as the Middle East quakes continue. I think one just came in there as we did the broadcast. Another 4.7 in Iran. Please leave us a comment if you saw a building crumble in the Middle East. Here's a 4.7 in Pakistan. So a little uptick there in Middle Eastern quakes. And a 4.5 in Chile at depth. So heads up there. If you're located anywhere around the Andes, be on alert for earthquakes. Let's look at pressure maps, as this is a harbinger of what may happen. Let's let this play. As anomalous low pressure systems are indications of earthquake zones. We do see a fairly anomalous anticyclone there over the North Atlantic, and we see a strong low south of the Aleutian Islands, as well as one right over Japan. So heads up, Japan. Japan is on notice. That's a pretty heavy low. I forecast a quake at Japan today, like right now. Anyway, let's go back to where it is now. There's the current situation. Let's see. That low is arriving, looks like midday Thursday. That's when that low starts to arrive at Japan. That's a huge risk factor. It's a very dense low. And yeah, so there's an earthquake forecast for you folks. Heads up Japan. I don't do it much, but sometimes it's super obvious. And Windy, I promise you, you will give me control of my computer back. I will shut you down. Don't make me do it. Check out volcanodiscovery.com to see today's eruptions featuring Dukono still on the list. Revenador calming down a little bit. 15,000 foot plume there. Sabancaya, 26,000 foot plume there. Please do not attempt to do a back handspring over Sabancaya, as your gymnastics career will end abruptly. Here are the warnings going on across the U.S. And we see some flood warnings, some flash flood warnings, flood with a flood, and then how about a flood? And how about your crops aren't getting planted? And how about your corn prices and your wheat prices and your soybean prices are going up along with your overall food prices over the next year? And there's some floods, and if you weren't aware that the flooding is happening, floods are happening, and millions and millions of acres of corn will not be planted at all, as well as wheat, and there's a lot of problems, and your food prices are going to go up, and inflation is going to happen. And here's tropical tidbits. Let's take a look at the jet stream in the northern hemisphere, which is barely a jet stream. It's completely disrupted, and it is all over the place. Now, this is the 250 millibar wind, and that's barely a jet stream, folks. Barely a jet stream. Look at how that is over the U.S. You don't even really get the full pressure. So that's not even meridional jet stream flow. That's not flow, period. That's just nothing but convection, as opposed to any sort of organized jet stream, which is caused by magnetic field striations. And here's the effect of all that convection. Now, while we're talking about convection and things like weather, let's talk some atmospheric physics. As we've had a lot of people claim that I'm a conspiracy theorist because of stuff that I say about Earth weather. So let's go to one of the latest videos here on the Thunderbolts project. In fact, it is the latest video. It's a 21-minute Andrew Hall video regarding ring currents and nature storm cycle and so on. So let me just find something here that he's talking about. Let's see, capacitance is a good one. All right, let's go to this zone right here. Just going to play a clip for you as a teaser. You have to find this one yourself by going to youtube.com/smAsho and visiting our featured channels. Thunderbolts Project is one of the major ones, and this is the sort of stuff we talk about all the time, as Hall currents are absolutely what are causing your weather to behave the way it does. And the more you understand about the physics of it, the better off you'll be. Let me play a clip, as I'm pretty sure YouTube nor Thunderbolts Project will ban me.
Are in the form of weak plasma winds because the atmosphere is only partially ionized. Cold plasma is mixed with neutral species, so thermoelectric and hydrodynamic effects come into play, raising the complexity, but the underlying electric circuit remains the same.
So anyway, Andrew Hall, now I don't know if he's related to the Hall for which Hall currents are named, but in any case, he's talking about ring currents. And let me get to another section here. I'll let one more little section play so you understand the charge equilibrium that is attempting to be achieved in the atmosphere. I mean, this is really what causes your weather.
Inverse of a thunderstorm, which has a rotating updraft that unwinds into threads of non-rotating downdrafts and rain. The cyclone's rotating updraft bands are made of thunderstorms, which electrically suggests the entire cyclone is a next level fractal expression of the thunderstorm, in which the independent.
Anyway, he's going to explain the difference between a tropical cyclone or a hurricane and a thunderstorm, how they're kind of inverse objects of each other. The one's very intense, the one's not very intense. Anyway, so check out youtube.com/smAsho and visit all kinds of stuff on there, such as the further viewing section, Thunderbolts Project. Good times. Andrew Hall putting out some controversial stuff. And for that, we thank you. Let's go to lightningmaps.org. As we see a bunch of heavy weather once again across the U.S., and we're not even going to cover it because if you've got thunder over your head, just head to lightningmaps.org and see what's going on. Let's get the water vapor map because this is quite useful. Not to be a sightseeing geek, but to be a real weather nerd. So let's let this play. And we're not going to define the difference between a geek and a nerd in today's episode. Perhaps we'll save that for the 1-year anniversary of a space weather video every day. Have you been watching? Anyway, there's what's going on in the water vapor. And let's zoom in on southern Wisconsin, as there is an interesting zone of atmospheric turbulence happening there. I'm sure Andrew Hall would be interested in this for the same reason we are, because he sees the obvious Hall currents in the sky. Now, when you notice currents that are perpendicular to the mode of motion of stuff, like these are right here, this system is trying to rotate clockwise because it is anticyclonic in nature, but all this moisture is preventing it from doing that because it wants to rotate. Anybody? Counterclockwise, because that's the direction lows rotate in the northern hemisphere. Anyway, we won't get into it any more than that, but it's not contrails, it's not chemtrails, and it's certainly not CO2. Now let's look at some thing or other and bring out the chat, as this is having a little trouble loading. So thanks for tuning in, Ari Wire, and thanks for all your hard work, smAsho staff. Cheers, everybody. So, first of all, here's an article on latest-today-news.com. Due to cataclysmic flooding, millions of acres of U.S. farmland will not be planted with crops this year. Now, we've been warning about this for 2 months, about how food prices will rise. Understand that, please. Plan accordingly by doing things such as growing your own food. And visit the links in the description below this video, as there are a lot of useful things to help us remain functioning, as well as to the articles we cover on the daily space weather videos. I wanted to cover this several days ago, and I haven't gotten around to it till today because it's not all that important, but 1,800 supernovae seen through the Subaru telescope at about 8 billion light years. So the thing to take away from this article, folks, is this. All stars are variable stars, including the one around which you orbit, the local yellow dwarf. Let's begin the "that is an ass" and "that is a hole in the ground" section. Biological warfare. Noun, warfare involving the use of biological weapons. Also, warfare involving the use of herbicides. Let's talk biological weapons. Here's one. It's known as a house centipede. Do these things scare the crap out of you? Well, they scare the crap out of me. They do have quite venomous poison in their front legs. Now, this is a segmented worm. It's not really an insect. It's more closely related to an earthworm than it is a thing like a bug. However, these things are super useful to have in your house and around your house, as they eliminate all kinds of pests that you don't want there. I mean, I have a photograph of one eating an earwig, but they eat all kinds of stuff. So next time you see one of these things, take up the challenge. They can't bite you. Their fangs are not substantial enough to pierce human skin. So they are related to the scorpions you'll find in the desert, but the house scorpion is a useful animal. So your best thing to do is to capture them in something glass out of which they will not be able to escape, and then just place them on the outside of the house somewhere. That is a biological weapon. Speaking of biological weapons, here's one that scared the crap out of me yesterday. I started rinsing something out in the sink, and guess what I found? About a 2-inch diameter one of these grass spiders in the sink. And guess what I did? I forcibly removed it. And then I took them outside and released them in a non-injurious fashion. And then I even made him get on the ground so he wouldn't be instantly eaten by a bird, because this is a useful animal that you want around your house. Now, people do things like buy ladybugs to seed their gardens. That's great. But never kill an animal that will help you out. Here's a phys.org article as we bypassed their entire Earth section because it was full of so much global warming nonsense that was just unreadable. And so to prevent from rage quitting, just decided to cover gamma ray pulsations detected from J0952-0607. Another catchy name. Thanks, astronomers, for coming up with that brilliant name for this pulsar. Anyway, there's some radio/gamma pulses that strangely mirrored each other, which is no surprise to anybody that understands the first thing about the electric universe. But anyway, another interesting article on phys.org. Links are already in the description. Now, let's talk about this Parker Solar Probe. Parker Solar Probe is one of the most important science experiments performed in the history of mankind. It's also the fastest object ever made. So this thing's gone like 270,000 miles per hour or something like that during its perihelions. I'm not sure what the video is. Let's see if this will play. I'm not so sure. But anyway, the Parker Solar Probe is doing some measurements of the sun that are otherwise not happening. So getting very close-up measurements of things like the Alphen zone, where the 10.7 centimeter radio flux emanates from the outer corona and so on, is super important. And this mission just launched. Just launched last year, and it's already completed its second perihelion. So we are waiting to get some data back from this thing. And super excited about it. One of the most exciting spacecraft ever made. It's going to keep getting closer and closer. And here's an article about it. Links already in the description. Trying to solve the sun's superheating mystery. Now, this is one of the many things that proves that there is no nuclear fusion dynamo in the center of the sun. Robitaille's liquid metallic hydrogen model is much more sensible. And so I would invite you also to view the Sky Scholar page, which is another one of our featured YouTube channels. These are in random order, by the way, folks. Here's the latest video, which is when he does a 30-minute presentation about Kirchhoff's law, something that is holding astronomy back in a horrifying way. Let's just do a clip and then get out of here, because there's a lot of stuff to do yet today. Let's just play a clip. Take it away, Robitaille, one of my favorite astronomers, if not my favorite astronomer ever, a legitimate modern-day Galileo. Cheers.
It's not. So when you pulse into this cavity, it was an amazing thing. And, you know, for AT, if the cavity is open, it takes about 100 watts of power to mutate the spins here.
Anyway, Robitaille is a PhD of radiology at Ohio State. Used to be the chair of the department until he started talking about astronomy. And he is part of the solution to the problem of modern astrophysics and indeed physics. So when we're able to measure stars based on actual observations instead of a bunch of cartoonish astronomy nonsense, that will be one hell of a good day. Let's go back to the sun, as it is about time to run from this location as if it is on a self-destruct mode. So here's 9.5 hours. Let's go to the obligatory 94 angstroms view. And we'll zoom way in on that active region, as there's probably a bunch of stuff flying around in this view. We'll bring up the chat, and then we'll get out of here. Harry, here's how they survive. They survive because when very diffuse amounts of protons hit your spacesuit, they get transformed into radiation. Some of that mass travels all the way through you. Some of it might end up in you, but it doesn't really matter because these objects are very small and you're made of mostly empty space. You ever seen Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Don't start saying space is fake, because if you start saying space is fake, I will not censor you, but I will make fun of you in public. Planting just starting? All right, that's good, Terrence. At least it's starting. Yes, I feel the platform's needed because I can't reach as many people on Minds or any place else as I can on YouTube. So that's pretty much the only reason it's used. It's because it's, you know, Google ruined YouTube when it purchased it. Google ruined YouTube, but YouTube remains. So we are holding out hopes that YouTube gets fixed someday. Maybe Google will even fix itself because it has no idea how to write code and it sucks at life. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, folks. Please visit the links in the description, as there are a whole bunch of things to which to contribute. Please visit our new affiliate, Hemp Lucid. There's a special spaced out link just for our spaced out viewers. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and press notification on YouTube, as we are as shadow banned as you get. Thanks, new subscribers. And stay tuned for another video later today, as that is in the works. We're approaching the 1-year anniversary. I think it's today. If it's not, it's tomorrow. So there's a video coming out regarding that as well. I'm going to do one more bonus view of the sun here. 193 angstroms view. Anyway, since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.